Hare Krishna. So we are reading from the third canto, 5th chapter, verse number 49. यावत् बलिते जहराम काले यथा वयं छानम् अदाम यत्र यथोपयेषां त इमे हि लोका बलिं हरन्तोऽन्नम् अदन्ति अनोहा यावत् बलिं ते जहराम काले यथा वयं चानम् अदाम यत्र यथोपयेषां त इमे हि लोका बलिं हरन्तोऽन्नम् अदन्ति अनोहा यावत् बलिं ते जहराम काले यथा वयं छानमदाम यत्र यथोपयेषां त इमे हि लोका बलिं हरन्तोऽन्नमदन्ति अनोहा
यावत् बलिं ते जहराम काले यथा वयं चान्नमदाम यत्र यथोभयेषां त इमे हि लोका बलिं हरन्तोऽन्नमदान्त्यनूहा
यावत् बलिं ते जहराम काले यथा वयं छानमदाम यत्र यथोपयेषां त इमे हि लोका बलिं हरन्तोऽन्नमदन्ति
Translation, purport, word to word meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yavat, as it may be. Balim, offerings. Te, your. Aja, O unborn one. Harama, shall offer. Kale, at the right time. Yatha, as much as. Vayam, we. Cha, also. Annam, food grains. Adama, shall partake. Yatra, whereupon. Yatha, as much as. ubhayesham, both for you and for us. Te, all. Ime, these. He, certainly. Lokaha, living entities. Balim, offerings. Harantaha, while offering. Annam, grains. Adanti, eat. Anuhaha, without disturbance. Translation: O unborn one, please enlighten us regarding the ways and means by which we can offer you all enjoyable grains and commodities, so that both we and all other living entities in this world can maintain ourselves without disturbance and can easily accumulate the necessities of life for both you both for you and for ourselves. Purport: developed consciousness begins from the human form of life and further increases in the forms of the demigods living in higher planets. The earth is situated almost in the middle of the universe, and the human form of life is the via medium between the life of the demigods and that of the demons. The planetary systems above the earth are especially meant for the higher intellectuals, called demigods. They are called demigods because although their standard of life is far more advanced in culture, enjoyment, luxury, beauty, education, and duration of life, they are always fully God conscious. Such demigods are always ready to render service to the Supreme Lord because they are perfectly aware of the fact that every living entity is constitutionally an eternal subordinate servitor of the Lord. They also know that it is the Lord only who can maintain all living entities with all the necessities of life. The Vedic hymns, Eko Bahunam Yo Vidhati Kaman, Ta Enam Abhruvan Ayatanam, Na Prajanihi Yasmin Pratishtha Annam Adame, etc., confirm this truth. In Bhagavad Gita also, the Lord is mentioned as Bhut Bhrit, or the maintainer of living entities. The modern theory that starvation is due to an increase in population is not accepted by the demigods or the devotees of the Lord. The devotees or the demigods are fully aware that the Lord can maintain any number of living entities, provided they are conscious of how to eat. If they want to eat like ordinary animals who have no God consciousness, then they must live in starvation, poverty, and want, like the jungle animals in the forest. The jungle animals are also maintained by the Lord with their respective foodstuffs, but they are not advanced in God consciousness. Similarly, human beings are provided with food grains, vegetables, fruits, and milk by the grace of the Lord. But it is the duty of human beings to acknowledge the mercy of the Lord. As a matter of gratitude, they should feel obliged to the Lord for their supply of foodstuff, and they must first offer him food in sacrifice and then partake of the remnants. In Bhagavad Gita 3.13, it is confirmed that one who takes foodstuff after a performance of sacrifice eats real food for proper maintenance of the body and soul. But one who cooks for himself and does not perform any sacrifice only eats only lumps of sin in the shape of foodstuffs. Such sinful eating can never make one happy or free from scarcity. Famine is not due to an increase in population, as less intelligent economists think. When human society is grateful to the Lord for all his gifts for the maintenance of the living entities, then there is certainly no scarcity or want in society. But when men are unaware of the intrinsic values of such gifts from the Lord, surely they are in want. A person who has no God consciousness may live in opulence for the time being due to his past virtuous acts. But if one forgets his relationship with the Lord, certainly he must await the stage of starvation by the law of powerful material nature. One cannot escape the vigilance of the powerful material nature unless he leads a God conscious or devotional life. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmelitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratushe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivas Adi Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Giram Yat Kripa Tavaham Vande Shri Gurundina Tarinam Hare Krishna. So we are reading from the third canto of the fifth chapter. We are discussing the section of the prayers of the demigods, where at this particular point, at this particular junction, where the demigods are offering prayers for being able to create. Here they are offering prayers for enlightenment, right? They are offering prayers for direction, right? And if you see this particular verse, the demigods are praying, please enlighten us regarding the ways and means by which we can offer you all enjoyable grains and commodities so that both we and all other living entities in this world can maintain ourselves without disturbance and can easily accumulate the necessities of life both for you and for ourselves. So you see, what is being discussed here is a very important principle, the principle of sacrifice, right? If you see also in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna very beautifully describes this principle in the third chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, in the Karma Yoga section, right? Where Krishna is talking about, you will see the difference, this verse, the difference between the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita with regards to the principle of sacrifice. The principle is the same, but here you see, you will observe, here the demigods are praying that we want to offer you all enjoyable grains and commodities so that we can become happy, we can benefit, right? But whereas if you see from the context of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is telling Arjuna that you should be performing sacrifices unto the demigods, right? Of course, there's a particular context in which Krishna is quoting it, right? So you see, even amongst normal beings, earthly beings, they also have to perform sacrifice. And the demigods also, who stay at the higher realms, the heavenly planets, they also have to perform sacrifice. So irrespective of whom you ever are, whether you're a human being or you're a demigod, the principle of sacrifice is very much essential, right? And therefore today we will try to discuss two sections. We will try to discuss the principle of sacrifice which Srila Prabhupada has talked about from a scriptural context. What exactly is the principle of sacrifice from the scriptural context, and what is the modern context now? What is the scenario now, right? And at the end we will try to culminate this in the ultimate sacrifice, that is with regards to chanting of the holy names. So in the scriptural context, we see, when we read the Bhagavad Gita in the 3rd chapter, now Krishna talks about, so basically if you have to talk about what is this principle of sacrifice. So sacrifice, we see sacrifice is a very universal principle. It is not a principle which is only confined to spiritual circles. Even in a secular, even in a material way, the principle of sacrifice is very much essential. Like what is exactly sacrifice? Sacrifice means something which is very dear to you, something which is very enjoyable for you. You are ready to voluntarily give it up in order to acquire something higher. That is the essential understanding and the meaning of sacrifice, right? And therefore, we see also in the material world, sacrifice is done. Like you see parents sacrifice, I recently I was talking to my, my Masi, and my cousin sister has finished her 12th and she's now going for her graduate studies, and she's very adamant she wants to do it in UK, in the United Kingdom, but the cost that is required to sponsor one's education in the United Kingdom is phenomenally very high. But my Masi is ready to take anything, even take a big loan in order to ensure that my cousin sister gets the best of the education. So you see, it's a big sacrifice. You're ready to forsake, taking a big loan and the anxiety of paying that big loan off. You're ready to do it. You're ready to give up your hard-earned money in order to ensure that your child gets something higher. Or you see the soldiers who fight for the nation. They forsake all kind of comforts, the comforts of a family, the comforts of a loving parents, the comforts of a society, in order to go to the border and fight for the nation. So these are examples where we see also in material circles, the very principle of sacrifice is there, right? And therefore, when Krishna is talking about the concept of yajna in the Bhagavad Gita, he also talks about yajna as a fire sacrifice. Definitely. That is, he takes it, when he talks about yajna, he also talks about in the literal sense, but there is also, when Krishna also talks about it in the metaphorical sense. Yajna. Like in the metaphorical sense, what do you mean by yajna? Just like Krishna gives an example of brahmacharis performing yajna, means offering the senses in the fire of sense control. That is what is the dharma of a brahmachari. Then he talks about the dharma of a grihastha. The dharma of a grihastha is he is supposed to offer the sense objects in the fire of the senses. Or he is supposed to perform charity. That is the dharma of the grihastha. So therefore, for every ashram, for every varna, for every ashram, there is some kind of sacrifice that is very much involved. So therefore, Krishna very beautifully, since we are first talking about the scriptural context, he talks about the spirit, he talks about sacrifice, he talks about the cycle of sacrifice. So very beautifully Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, you have the Supreme Lord, who's also Akshara. From the Supreme Lord comes the scriptures. From the scriptures talk about performing your duty, the varnashram duty, your prescribed actions, right? And the very same scriptures talk about the performance of yajna. And from yajna, when you perform sacrifice, then Krishna talks about Parjanya. What does it mean of Parjanya? Yes. Parjanya means, rains, right? And from Parjanya comes Anna, right? And the living entities, that is Bhutani, they acquire that, they honor that Anna, right? And therefore, that before honoring it, you are supposed to offer it back to the Supreme. So therefore, Krishna very beautifully describes this cycle of sacrifice. And Krishna also warns, when you do not perform this sacrifice, then this person is termed or coined as a thief. He is considered to be a thief. Not only a thief, he is considered to be a sinful. Because without offering it in sacrifice to the Supreme Lord, he is taking it without he is taking it without permission, right? And therefore we see how prevalent this principle of sacrifice is. This principle of sacrifice acknowledges the existence of higher powers. That is why Krishna is talking about offering it to higher powers, especially in the context of the Bhagavad Gita. He is talking about it, offering it to the demigods. So therefore, this principle of acknowledging the Vedas, the entire society, the Vedic society is designed in such a way where you acknowledge that there are higher powers beyond you, right? Beyond, there are powers which control higher things. Like for example, like the scriptures talk about, we get heat and light, right? So therefore we are indebted to the sun. We get rains. So therefore we are indebted to Indradev. Like that is why we see in the Govardhan Puja, the Vrajvasis offer sacrifices to Indradev in order to get rains, which is very much essential for their crops, right? So therefore, this is what is the Vedic or the scripture context of sacrifice. Now what is the modern context? Now in the modern context, unfortunately, people have this notion that everything is automatically happening. The rains are coming, it is automatic. The sun is giving heat and light, it is automatic. So therefore in today's human society, there is this childish mentality. Why this childish mentality? Because a child is very habituated to taking things for granted. That yes, automatically I'm getting everything from my parents. I ask for it, I demand for it, and I get it, right? But until and unless when the child grows after a certain age, then he understands what is the hard work involved, what not the parents have to do in order to acquire, in order to meet my demands. But unfortunately, in today's modern context, the modern society lives in a very childish mentality that yes, everything is happening automatically. Everything is happening by chance. This word chance is a word which is used by the atheistic class of people in order to decry the existence of God. Yes, everything is just happening by chance. And therefore, science also, the entire scientific worldview is based on this chance theory. Everything is coming by chance. So therefore, science, when science, like we learn about in our scientific textbooks, we learned about the process. Like Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita is talking about acknowledging higher beings. In science also talks about how do we get rains. Now Krishna talks about we get rains by performing yajna. Now how does science describe how do we get rains? Okay, there is a body of water. There is a sun. The sun evaporates all the water. As a result of the evaporation of that water, there are clouds formed. And as a result, at the right temperature, at the right pressure, there is condensation and it forms rains. Now, is that wrong? No, it is right. It is not wrong, but this is only partial truth. So, science offers you only a mechanistic approach. Like for example, let us say in a cricket match, there is last ball of the match. This is a World Cup final over, and in order to win the cup, of the last ball, there are 6 runs required. So you can imagine how intense the match is. and the batsman, he successfully hits a sixer. And then in the post-match interview, the reporter comes and asks the person, how was it that you were able to hit a six of the last ball? And the batsman says, oh, it was because of the law of mechanics. Now, okay, in one sense it is right. The ball is coming at a particular speed, and you hit the bat, you swing the bat with a particular speed, and both the ball and the bat meet at a particular angle, and because of that the ball is propelled towards the boundary at a particular speed. Now, but that answer is very irrelevant, right? But beyond that, what the news reporter wants to understand is that, what did you do? What is the personal approach you took in order to practice that hook shot? How were you able to anticipate whether it is a yorker or whether it is a bouncer? So that is what the news reporter wants to understand. So but unfortunately, science only revolves around the mechanistic approach. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada was very, very adamant like there was one scientist called Dr. Benford. He wrote an entire book about grass. What is grass? What is the texture of the grass? What is the various colors the grasses may come in, the chemical formula. He wrote an entire thesis. But Srila Prabhupada had only one question to that particular scientist, Dr. Benford. Can you please tell me who is the person behind this grass? That is the person approach, right? So science only offers you mechanistic approach. But the Vedic context, it does not only talk to you about what is a mechanistic approach, it goes one layer above, one layer higher. It goes into the deeper reality that beyond the mechanistic approach, there is a person, there is a being who is responsible for all this. And therefore, Srila Prabhupada in the purport is very beautifully talking about gratitude. Human beings are provided with food grains, vegetables, fruits and milk by the grace of the Lord. But it is the duty of human beings to acknowledge the mercy of the Lord. As a matter of gratitude, Prabhupada is clearly mentioning, they should feel obliged to the Lord for a supply of foodstuff. So therefore, we offer sacrifice as a matter of gratitude. That Krishna, you have given us so much. But what do we see in today's modern society? The modern society is filled with ingratitude. And how do we understand this? Like today, I remember I was once asking my cousin, so very small, 4-year-old. So I asked, so where does milk come from? What did he say? Comes from packet. I was shocked. Generally, where does milk come from? Milk comes from cow. When my cousin told me milk comes from packet, such level, the modern science tries to disconnect you from the source. Where does food come from? It comes from the grocery store. No, it comes from the land. Not from grocery store, that is where you purchase it from, but it comes from the land. So you see, such is the level of ingratitude that is permeating modern society, that we do not know where does our food source come from, right? And Prabhupada is talking about that food stuff. In today's modern society, wasting food has become normalized. It has become normalized. Like according to United Nations statistic, whatever crops are produced, 1.3, according to Food Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, FAO, 1.3 billion tons go in waste. And Prabhupada is talking about the concept of overpopulation. Scarcity, because of overpopulation, which is actually, Prabhupada is saying it is actually a mythology. It is a myth, which Srila Prabhupada in one lecture, which he gives to the leading people, I was reading the transcription yesterday, So Prabhupada in 1975, he's talking to a group of leading people in Mauritius, where Prabhupada is telling them that I'm traveling all over the world and I am seeing so much of vacant land. And you people are talking about scarcity. You people are talking about because of overpopulation, because of the usage of resources, there is scarcity of resources, and as a result of the scarcity of resources, there is economic burden. And you are attributing it to overpopulation. First, Prabhupada made this argument. In Mauritius, when I came, I see so much vacant land. But in that vacant land, I see that you are growing sugarcane. That was the first argument Prabhupada put. Because sugarcane is what? Sugarcane is a cash crop. A crop which is used for, boosting the economy, to export it to other countries. Prabhupada said, first that land, you have abundance land, instead of using it for growing sugarcane, use it for growing food grains, which is very essential. Then where will there be shortage of food? Where will be the hunger problem? That was the first diagnosis. The second diagnosis that Prabhupada puts in that lecture, he says, I travel to Africa, I travel to Australia and America, but I see majority of the land is dedicated to growing grains for animals, which is called technically fodder crops. You feed it to animals, and in turn, those animals are eaten by humans. And Dhruta Prabhu, in a Back to Godhead magazine, he supports this statement of Prabhupada with statistics. So he says a very amazing statistic. Let us say you're growing 16 pounds of grains, 16 pounds of crops. Now that can be used to feed 100, 200 men. But that 16 pounds of crops is used in order to feed one animal. And that one animal can satisfy how many tongues? 4 or 5 people maximum. Where is the proportion of 4 men and where is the proportion of 100 men? So, and this is what it is, overpopulation. And as a result, now we are going to read one article, a very amazing article, how Prabhupada busts this theory of overpopulation. So this is, I require 2 devotees. One devotee can take the role of Prabhupada and one devotee can take the role of the devotee. Yes, Path Prabhu is taking the role of devotee. Prabhupada, yes. So please read this very attentively. Please read this loudly and attentively, because Prabhupada really, busts this overpopulation theory which scientists talk about. Yes, you could start. So you could read. So this is a conversation between His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and some of his disciples which took place on an early morning walk in December 1973 at Venice Beach, California.
Devotee. Srila Prabhupada, sometimes we argue that although the laws of nature are very powerful, we can overcome such things as disease and death. We surrender to Lord Krishna, since he is controlling the nature. But skeptics say that we can gradually come to control of laws of nature on our own, without God.
No, we are forced to accept the laws of nature. How can anyone say he has conquered the laws of nature?
Well, the doctors and biologists have conquered so many diseases.
But people are still becoming diseased. How have the doctors stopped disease?
In Africa and India, for instance, they are inoculating everyone against smallpox, and they have saved many thousands of children from dying.
But the children will grow up and get old and die eventually in any case. So death has not been stopped. And besides, why do they bother about these children? They don't want overpopulation. So logically, the doctors should let them die. But the doctors are illogical. On one side, they want to check the death of children, and on the other side, they recommend the use of contraceptives and kill the children in the womb by abortion. Why? Why are they killing? To check the increase in population. Then when children are dying in another part of world, why are they anxious to save them?
Once a child is born, they want to save him. But when the child is still in the womb, they feel that they can kill him. They say he is not yet a human being.
But the child is already born as soon as a woman becomes pregnant. Pregnancy means the child is already born. How can they say there is no child? What is this nonsense? When a woman is pregnant, why do we say she is with child? This means the child is already born. Therefore, I say this abortion business is simply rascaldom.
Well, they have rationalized it.
How?
Sometimes they say they are doing it what they feel is best. And of course, they deny that there is any such thing as karma to punish them later. It seems like they have a kind of rabbit philosophy. With a rabbit, when a rabbit closes his eyes, so he doesn't see the wolf bearing down on him, he may actually think he is safe.
So, the abortionists believe in rabbit philosophy. It is not a man's philosophy, it is a rabbit's philosophy, frog's philosophies, as philosophy. And they have been described in Srimad Bhagavatam. Swavid Varha Shastra Karhai Samsutta Purushah Pashu. The leaders who often support abortion are rascals, and they are glorified by another set of rascals and fools. The people in general, because the whole population is made up of rascals, they elect a rascal as their leader. Then, being dissatisfied, they throw the first rascal out of office and elect another rascal. This is called punha punascharvita charvananam, chiving the chived. The people do not know whom to elect. Therefore, they have to be educated to choose a leader who is God conscious, who is actually fit to be a leader. Then they will be happy. Otherwise, they will go on electing one rascal and rejecting him, electing another rascal and rejecting him, and so on. In America, there is slogan, in God we trust. So, we don't say, elect me president. We simply say that standard for a leader should be that he knows who God is and that he trusts in him. And if people actually want to know who God is, they can read Bhagavad Gita. They should read it with intelligence and try to understand. And then, for further progress, they may study Srimad Bhagavatam. It is not that we are theorizing. We are taking our information about God from authorized books.
In our leaflet about politics, we list the qualifications of a leader. First, we say he must follow the 4 regulative principles: no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, and no indulging in intoxications. And the one positive injunction we give is the leader chant the holy name of Lord. But someone might argue that these requirements violate the constitutional principles of separation of church and state.
If you believe in God, why should you have any objection to chanting the holy name of God? If you say, in God we trust, then you must know the name of God and the address of God. Then you can actually trust Him. And if you don't know these things, then learn them from us. We are giving you God's name, address, qualities, everything. And if you say there is no God, then what is the meaning of in God we trust?
They have made a propaganda to separate church and state, but they have also separated God and country.
Those who are making this propaganda do not understand what God is. God cannot be separated from anything because everything is God. Maya tatam idam sarvam. If they study the Bhagavad Gita, they will understand that God is present everywhere. It is not possible to separate anything from Him. Just as your consciousness is present in every part of your body, so the Supreme Consciousness, God, is present everywhere in the universe. Krishna says, Vedaham Samitani. I know everything that has happened. Unless he is everywhere, how can he know everything? What do you say?
This is logical, Srila Prabhupada.
How can you separate God from the government? You may reject any so-called church and any so-called religion that agrees, yes, God and the state should be separate. And that is God's instruction, that we reject such so-called religions. Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja. Give up all kinds of so-called religion and simply surrender to me. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, people may say that they believe in God, but you can know they are ignorant of God, what God is, when they are trying to separate God from government.
Thank you very much. So here we see how Srila Prabhupada is, Srila Prabhupada is actually saying, on one hand, you are trying to, inoculate the children and protect them, but on the other hand, you want to, use contraceptives in order to check population. This is totally a contradiction. And therefore, in today's society, we see this abortion has become so normalized. Like His Grace Kanai Thakur was once sharing, that one devotee was sharing with him. Now, even in medical textbooks, they don't use the word abortion. What is the word they use? Tissue termination. The tissue is terminated. Just makes you feel that, okay, you have not done any sinful act. It is normal. You need not, they need not be guilt that be produced from your heart that you have done some very heinous act. So this is what is happening in today's world. Everything has become sinful activity has become normalized. Like in today also, we see, the packaging industry. They'll package meat in a very nice manner and they will label the meat as halal. Literally, there's a brand name, halal meat, in the UAE. So that wherever you go in the freezers, you would see halal meat. But actually, halal, even the word halal involves, Prabhupada writes in the purport, in his disciples write in the 12th canto, that halal also has a spirit of sacrifice. Because even when you eat meat, according to scriptures, you have to offer, when you have to cut meat, 1/7 of the meat can be only kept for yourself and the remaining meat has to be distributed to others. And not only that, when you cut the animal, you have to chant a mantra called mas. We normally generalize, say, okay, hum mas kha rahe hain. But actually the word mas, Prabhupada explains in a lecture, it is actually a mantra. Mam saha. Now you are eating me. Now you are killing me. In the next life, I will kill you. Which is actually very deep. So therefore, this was the spirit of this was the sacrifice that was involved. It was just not an ordinary sacrifice. And that was what was truly called halal. But today, without the spirit of sacrifice, people are eating what also in the name of meat is haram. Prabhupada clearly makes a distinction in one of the purports. So therefore, now in the sacrifice which Krishna talks about in the Bhagavad Gita, the fire sacrifice which may not be involved, which may not be very relevant to us. Now what about us? Now like in every sacrifice, now what are the essential elements of a sacrifice? What is very important, like you make a fire sacrifice, you have to be very attentive, right? You just cannot chant the sacrificial mantras, the way you want it. Because, the way you pronounce the mantra, that is the effect it has, right? And therefore, you have to give your full attention. In a very similar manner, we every single day perform a sacrifice. What is that sacrifice? The sacrifice of the chanting of the holy names. And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yajnanam japa yagyosmi. Out of all the sacrifices, I am the chanting of the holy names of the Supreme Lord. So therefore, every single day, and what do we generally we see a sacrifice, how a sacrifice is performed, a traditional fire sacrifice, it is performed in a circle, right? So every day we also perform a sacrifice, by sitting in circles, right? By sitting in circles to chant the holy names. And therefore, it is very, very important that we perform this sacrifice, just like every sacrifice requires our attention, requires, properly chanting the mantra. We generally tell newcomers, the 3 P's. What is that? Posture, pronunciation, and prayer. But we should also understand that these are the essential ingredients for the sacrifice that is required to chant the holy names. Like every sacrifice requires ingredients. So these ingredients of proper posture, proper pronunciation, and chanting in a very prayerful mood is very, very essential. Once I was, I had gone to Kanai Thakur's room. So that time Prabhuji was giving a course, he was giving in Bhakti Shastri, he was giving a Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So, I was, so Prabhuji asked me, so what kind of bhakti are we performing? I said, Prabhuji, we are learning about sadhana bhakti, we are performing sadhana bhakti. But in that sadhana bhakti also there are 2 categorizations. One is Vaidhi sadhana bhakti and one is Raganuga sadhana bhakti. I said, yes, Prabhu, definitely, we are not at the Raganuga stage. We are performing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. Then Prabhuji asked me, are you sure you are performing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti? I said, yes, Prabhu, very confidently. Today I saw you in today's morning, you are chanting. I said, what happened, Prabhuji? How much you were sleeping? Were you really performing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti? Then Prabhuji told me that, what is Vaidhi sadhana bhakti? I said, Prabhu, Vaidhi sadhana bhakti means you are following the injunctions of the scriptures and the injunctions of Guru. Then what does Guru say? I said, Guru says to chant attentively. Does Guru say to sleep and chanting? I said, no. So think about it. Are you really performing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti? Then I was humbled. I said, no, Prabhu, I am not performing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. Because I am not following what are the injunctions. Injunction is to chant attentively, right? So therefore, this most important sacrifice, which every day we perform, should be done with utmost attentiveness, with utmost attention. Otherwise, Maya has millions of reasons to creep into our consciousness and take away our attention. Take our attention away from the chanting of the holy names. So while we are talking about the spirit of sacrifice, which Srila Prabhupada is talking about, while the demigods are offering to the Supreme Lord, the most important sacrifice that we every day perform is the sacrifice of the chanting of the holy names. So let us chant with utmost attentiveness, in a very prayerful mood, that, oh my dear Lord, that while we all assemble, to come together to chant the holy names, let me do it in the mood of sacrifice, as an offering to you. Like this, this is the most important sacrifice that we every day perform. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.